Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's my first time at Laracon, and let's get started. So I'm Erika. Nice to meet you. And who am I, right? I'm a PHP developer for about 10 years, but I really have a sysadmin background, so I'm very interested in sysadmin stuff. That's why I got interested in Vagrant and provisioning. So I wrote a book on LeonPub, it's the Vagrant cookbook, and also Ansible.com is a project that is inspired by Puppet, and I will talk a little bit about it later on. So, what to expect from this talk? I will start with a Vagrant overview, so you have a good idea if you are not used to Vagrant. So I will start talking about Vagrant, and then I will talk about provisioning with Ansible, and then I will share some useful resources so you can get started quickly. So let's go. The first thing that people ask when talking about Vagrant is why Vagrant? Especially if you are a Node developer, as I am, you are probably used to work just fine in your local machine, install everything. But come on, we can't have this anymore. It's 2014. Come on, we have so many great tools. We don't need to go through this again. Never again, you know? So why Vagrant? Well, Vagrant is a tool that makes possible to have reproducible and portable development environments. And what does that mean? It means that you have a development environment that goes with your code repository, with your code base. So everything you need to create this environment will be in the project repository. And you just need to run Vagrant app. And in a few minutes, your environment will be ready. The application will be up and running. And it's totally reproducible. All the steps that are needed to create this environment will be there, defined in some files. And this is also, you can just destroy the environment. It's a disposable environment that you can destroy and recreate any time you want, how many times you want. So this really enables easier code collaboration, because then it will make really easier for other people to contribute to your project. If it's an open source project, it's really amazing. Or if you are working in a team and your colleague can just help you and just get the project, clone the repository, and run Vagrant app. So it really enables easier code collaboration. You can also use Vagrant to perform some backend environment tests to see how your application performs with different web servers and different configurations. And you can also make benchmarks, and you can also use Vagrant to learn how to use the automation tools like Puppet, Chef, and Ansible. These tools are widely used by DevOps, and you can use them for deployment strategies. And Vagrant can help you learn these tools in an easy way, because you don't need real servers. You can just try it with virtual machines, even with multiple servers. So, how Vagrant works? First thing. So there are four terms here that are very important. First, the host and the guest. So the host machine is actually your main operating system, is where Vagrant is installed. Let's say it's your real machine. And the guest machine usually is a virtual machine. The guest machine is the machine controlled by Vagrant. It usually is a virtual machine, but it can also be something else. This will depend on the provider you are using. So the provider will give you a virtual machine or a VPS, a server that later on will be configured by the provisioner. So we have many different providers for Vagrant. The default one is VirtualBox, is the most used one. It will give you a virtual machine from VirtualBox. There's also VMware. You have to install a plugin and pay for it, but It's okay if you want to use it. Then there's also AWS and DigitalOcean. There will give you VPS, and you can have also Docker and others. So the provisioner part is very important, is the heart of the environment, because it will set up the machine. So it will install packages and make some configurations. And there are also a lot of different provisioners for Vagrant. Puppet, Chef, Ansible, Shell, Salt, Docker. But the most popular ones, according to a research I made in January, the most popular ones are Puppet, Chef, and Ansible in this order. So if you already used Vagrant before, there's a big chance that you used it with Puppet, because it's very widely used, especially with PHP developers. So today, you will see how we can get started with provisioning with Ansible. And talking about provisioning, we can use multiple provisioners. Actually, you can have Shell and Puppet, Shell and Ansible. That's a common case. You have a little shell script, and you have a bigger provisioning in one of these tools. And a really common question that I get at conferences is, why not using shell script? Isn't it easier? Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think it's easier. It will depend on your personal experience. Maybe it's easier for you, but it's not really great in the long term, because shell script's not really great, that doesn't have a great readability. It gets really confusing and messy with time. If you have a big provisioning, you should be using a tool that is right for the job. And these tools, they were created for this. Puppet, Chef, Ansible, they are automation tools. They were created for automation. So there are a lot of stuff already implemented there that you would have to manually to recreate on Shell to implement, and why not just using one of these tools? Think about the future, your colleagues, someone needs to install add a new package or do some more configuration and change the provisioning, and Shell makes things harder in the long term. So, some terms. I talked already about the host and guest and provider and provisioner. There are a couple other terms, important terms, so boxes. Vagrant uses boxes. A box is basically a representation of a virtual machine, or of a machine, of a server. So you have Ubuntu boxes officially provided by Vagrant. They are the default ones, the most common ones, but you can also find other boxes, CentOS, Red Hat, and others. And now we have Vagrant Cloud. It's a website where you can go and find boxes and also share boxes. If you create a custom box, you can go there and share your box. Vagrant file is the main Vagrant configuration file. It's where you go and define how your environment will look like. If you have one machine or two machines, or how much memory and the network and stuff like that. The synchronized folder, it's a folder that is shared between the host and the guest machine. And this is very important, because then you can still work in your host machine using your favorite IDE, your favorite editor, and still have the virtual machine only running the application. So you can access the application through the browser in your host machine. Because they are like, the virtual machine doesn't know that it's only a virtual machine. It thinks it's real. So they don't have you have to use the shared folder in order to change the files and change the code you are writing, and then you can go to the browser and reload and see the changes. There are a couple of some different options you can use with synchronized folders to make them better, to make them faster, like NFS. You can also use rsync and some others. Okay, this is just so you get used to the terms. And now Let's see how a Vagrant file looks like. This is really the simplest thing that does something. It's a very basic Vagrant file. It's Ruby, but it's actually very simple. You don't need to know Ruby to create your Vagrant file. It's very simple. You have the box definition. So I'm using here one of the official boxes from HashiCorp, is the company who creates Vagrant, who created Vagrant. So this is a Ubuntu box, a very basic and common one. And we are defining here a provisioning using shell. It's just an inline shell script, echo hello world, and it's very simple, and I will show you this demo soon, in a few moments. So this is the output, but I will show you, hopefully it works. So the commands. Vagrant app is the most famous one. Vagrant app obviously turn on the machine, so we run Vagrant app, and then Vagrant will start, turn on the machine, and after that process, it will run the provisioners. One thing to notice is that the provisioning part doesn't need to happen all the time. It only happens once, when you first create the machine by default. After that, it doesn't run again because it's not necessary. The machine is already configured. It saves time. So if you want to force the execution of the provisioner, you can use the flag / provision. The same with the reload command. The reload command will restart the machine, pretty obvious. And also you can use the provision to force the option. The provision, Vagrant provision, will only run the provisioner. So if the machine is already turned on, you can just run Vagrant provision, and this will run the provisioners again. Vagrant suspend will suspend the machine, and you can save the state when you run Vagrant suspend. And then you can get back to that state by running Vagrant resume. And Vagrant destroy will destroy the environment, and then you can just start from the ground. When you run Vagrant app again, it will do everything again from the ground. So let's see our demo. That's where it is. Here, okay. Okay. So this is that very basic Vagrant file that I just showed you. So we run Vagrant app. And it takes a few moments. First, it's importing the box. So this box actually is already in my machine. The first time that you will run Vagrant with a new box, it will download it from the Vagrant cloud in this case, but it could be from somewhere else. You can also define a URL for your box, for a specific box file. And in this case, it's already in my machine. It's only copying it only copies the default box, so it can customize it, run the provisioners and everything. So it's checking if the box is up to date, because the Vagrant cloud has the new boxes. Well, what? Okay, I don't know what it is. Couldn't resolve host. I think it's the internet. Yeah, okay. But it doesn't, yeah, it's just a Vagrant, it's just a shell script. Okay, it worked. So this is the provisioning part. So you can see here that it's running the provisioner shell and then running inline script. And this is the output from, this is just the command that I added in the Vagrant file as an inline shell script. And the command is important to remember that this is running in the guest machine, it's not in my machine, the host, in the guest it was run. Okay, so let's get back. Yeah. Okay, so now I will talk about provisioning with Ansible. So first. Ansible. Let's talk about Ansible. Ansible is a very simple and powerful automation tool. If you are used to other tools like Puppet, you will find that Ansible is really simple. The tasks are defined in YML, so it's really straightforward, easy to read and to understand what's going on. The execution of tasks is sequential, so it's just in the order you define them, they are executed, not like Puppet that you must explicitly define dependencies. And you have also a modules directory like we have with the other tools, similar tools, like with Chef and Puppet. There is Ansible Galaxy. You can go there and find modules and roles, stuff that you can get to use with your provisioning. But Ansible already has a lot of built-in modules, so usually you might need, of course, something from there, but you can just write your own stuff because it's really, really easy. One detail that you must remember is that Ansible requires installation in the host machine. It's different from Puppet and Chef when using with Vagrant specifically, because when using Vagrant with Puppet or Chef, you don't need to install anything else. You just Vagrant or in VirtualBox. But with Ansible, you need to install Ansible as well. That's probably because Vagrant doesn't want you to ship the package Vagrant with a whole lot of other stuff inside, and also because Ansible is having a lot of updates. It's a very active project now in the open source community, and they are always releasing new stuff, new features. So it would not make sense to have it packed in Vagrant, inside Vagrant. And another thing that is important is that Ansible is not officially supported on Windows. So if you use Windows, which it's up to you, but you know, I won't say anything else more, but okay. If you use Windows, then there's still a way to make it work on Windows. There's a trick that you can run a little shell script, and you actually run Ansible in the guest machine, in a local SSH connection. It works. So yeah, that's this. But it's just fine for Linux and OS X. So, so the Vagrant file for using Ansible, it doesn't change much, but we have this provisioning block here. It's more or less like that. You can have other options, of course. You can specify other specific options for Ansible, but it's just the basic usage. So the playbook, Ansible uses playbooks. Puppet, the playbook is the equivalent of a manifest. So this is how a playbook looks like. This is a very simple playbook. So what I'm saying here is that I want to run this playbook in all tests, in all hosts of my inventory. If you are using Ansible standalone, then you have to define a file that's called an inventory file, where you define your servers. But when you are using Ansible with Vagrant, you really don't need to worry about this, because Vagrant already generates an inventory file for you automatically, so no worries about that. And usually you will be running in all hosts, because even if you have a multiple machine environment with Vagrant, it will be, the provisioning will be separated, so it's still like this. No worries about this part. I'm saying here that I want to use sudo for the tasks because, well, usually installing packages will require sudo. And instead of using the option in each task, you can just define that you want to use sudo by default. And in here, these are the tasks, actually. So it's just a YML array, and first we have name, is just for the verbosity, for the output purposes, and we are using here the module apt is a built-in module from Ansible that abstracts the package managers. So you can use this module and it will work the same for different operating systems. It will update the cache and will install the package Nginx. So usually we have this, the automation tools, they see the system through states. So a package, there is a state for a package. It can be installed, it can be purged, or so you will define in here that you want to change the state of this package to latest. And this is a quick comparison between a playbook and a manifest, both doing the same thing. So in the right, there is a Puppet manifest. You have first the apt-get update command. So it's not abstracted. It's a real, actual apt-get update. So it won't run in some systems, some operating systems. Of course, you can have a module, a Puppet module for that, but it's something else. It's an external module, something else that you add to your provisioning, while the playbook, the Ansible approach, it already has the built-in module for apt. Another thing to notice, of course, is the requirement here. So in the manifest, I have to explicitly declare the dependency. This package must be installed, but it requires that this other task is executed before. That's what we need to do with Puppet. We need to always require tasks and say and specify the order, because it's not executed in the same order you define. And then the Ansible is just plain and simple. It's in the same order that you define. So, variables. Of course, it's important. Variables are like the heart of any kind of programming language and the first thing that we learn, right? So we have a special section in the playbook that the var section, where we can define some variables. There are other approaches as well to define variables, but this is the simplest thing, the simplest one. So we are defining here a variable called web server, and the value is Nginx. And I can just use this variable in the tasks. It's similar to Twig. If you are used to Twig, it's similar. So we can also use these variables inside templates and in any playbook that you are including. So it's kind of global. Yeah. So also arrays. So instead of creating a bunch of tasks for installing package, one task for each package, you can just create an array and define the package. And this is actually a loop. This is what they consider a loop in Ansible. You use the option with items, and then you pass it an array, and it will just loop through these values. It will install all these packages, and you just need one task for that. So this is how it would look like if you define the packages here in the var section, and then you can just pass the variable here. It will work just fine. And this is good because then you can have here the main definitions of variables, here the packages you want to install, other stuff, and you can include the tasks from other files, and you can still use the variables from anywhere. It makes your playbooks more versatile. So let's go for another demo. I hope it works. Let's see, internet. I don't know if internet is working, but let's try. Okay. Where? Okay. Okay, so here I have a simple Vagrant file. It's almost the same. I'm just defining the network as well. because by default, if you don't define it, VirtualBox will just create a network between host and guest. You won't be able to access through your browser. So this is a very common configuration, actually, because normally you need to define the network. And for some things, some features like NFS, if you are using VirtualBox as provider, and then you want to use NFS for the synchronized folders, which make them better performance, you need to use a private network. It's something from VirtualBox, a limitation from VirtualBox. And also, it's better because then you define the IP address that you want. If you have multiple machines, you need to do that, so you can you can have things organized. Oh God. So, and this is the playbook. It's the same I just showed you. So I define the packages in a variable, and then I run just 2 tasks. Let's see. I don't know if it will work, because internet. But I have you covered. I have a video here. So, yeah. You never know. So it's importing again all that process, because it's the first run. Okay. So let's see. Come on. Yay! Oh, let's see. Wait. Yeah, but it's running. It's already something good. So I will steal a little bit of Wi-Fi right now. Not Wi-Fi. Yeah, Wi-Fi. I'm on Wi-Fi, yeah. Anyways. So this is how the output looks like. It's very informative, but you can make it more verbose if you want to. You just need to add an option to the Vagrant file, and this is very important. With any provisioner, if you have some kind of problem, it's important you increase the verbosity, and all these provisioners have this option. You just align, you add in the Vagrant file, and then you can see more detail on what is going on. So in case Ansible uses SSH, it doesn't use client and like a client and another thing installed in the server, stuff like that. It uses just plain SSH. So you can see all the details, and then sometimes you might run into problems of keys or a connection, fuse, or something like that. And then you can just increase the verbosity and see what is happening. So you see that the first one was OK. So the output, this OK default means that the task was run and it was OK, but it didn't change anything because it was just an update in the cache. This first thing here, gathering facts. Facts are a special type of variable. So the facts are information from systems. So it's basically information about, in this case, the virtual machine, or maybe from a server, or from the systems that Ansible is controlling. So you can get information like the IP address of the network interface, ATH0, ATH1, and a lot of other information. You can use them in your templates and your playbooks just like any other variable. It's global. But you have to make sure that you test it to see if that value is available, because sometimes it might not be available. It might not be available in all machines. You have different values, different variables. So you can see here that it was just one task. We used the with items option, so we had just one task, install packages, and it changed it because it changed the state of these packages. And it says here all the packages that were installed, that this was defined in the variable in the array. So yeah, OK, and changed one because one task changed state, and three tasks, three things were executed. OK, so it worked. That's fine. OK. Now, let's get back. Not here. Here, yeah. So, now I'd like to show some resources so you can get started quickly with Vagrant and Ansible. The first one is Ansible.com. So, if you already used Puppet, you know that it's awesome. It's a really great project. And I used it when I started using Vagrant. If you don't know Puppet, it's a web interface where you can just choose a lot of options, different options, and download a bundle containing a Vagrant project, Vagrant, setup. So you get the provisioning Puppet in the case of Puppet. And it's really great. But I started using Ansible because it's simpler. I really like Ansible. And I thought, we don't have a tool for that. It would be awesome if we would have something like Puppet, but with Ansible. So I created this. I bootstrapped it, and people liked it and started to contribute. And it's open source, it's on GitHub, you can contribute to. So, Ansible, it's very simple, it's nothing compared to Puppet, but still, it can help you bootstrap a Vagrant setup. So, let me show you. Where? Here. Okay, just a second. There. Okay. Sorry. Okay, my mouse is really... Okay. So, as you can see, it's very simple, but you can choose here the box that you want. So I want to create an environment with Ubuntu Trustita or Precise or only Ubuntu for now, because it's really complicated to make sure everything works in a whole lot of different operating systems. But we will get there. So the machine options, the network, the IP, internal IP address, the amount of memory you want, shared folder, and here you can choose, for now you can have Nginx and PHP 5 FPM, or Apache, or HHVM with Nginx, which is cool, right? And so here are the PHP options, and you can choose a version and Composer, add Composer, Xdebug, and stuff. And MySQL for now only, but we have something, other databases coming, I hope so, soon. System packages, time zone, and then you can just hit the button, and almost there. Whoa. Okay. Now. So you can just download this. Don't look at my downloads folder. Jesus, all my movies. I hope there is nothing compromising. So then you download the zip package, and we have the Vagrant file here. So you will notice that this Vagrant file is quite complex, but I will explain why. Because we made this, we had a contribution for a friend, and it's actually your solution. Frank here gave this solution to Keijian, Viri Haximus, and then he contributed to Ansible, and this creates a, it checks if it's Windows, and then if it's Windows, it will use a shell provision instead of the Ansible by default. And then this Ansible, this Windows.sh script will basically set up Ansible to run in the Guest machine with local SSH connection. Is that correct? Okay. So yeah, just to make sure it can work also on Windows, because especially if you are dealing with an open source project, like say, you want to make sure that everybody can easily contribute to your project, right? So you cannot just say, I don't want Windows users to contribute. No, you are also welcome, please. So we did this, so yeah, it's cool. So what else? And then we have the Ansible provisioning here. And then it's, it has a lot of other stuff. I couldn't teach you all Ansible stuff in one talk. It was just an overview, but you can go there and download the package and see what we have here. We have roles, and roles are the modules, kind of the equivalent of a Puppet module or a chef cookbook. So we organized our playbooks into roles. So we have like Nginx role. So we have init, like a set of common tasks to run, and then we have Nginx, we have PHP5 FPM. So each folder is a role. In a role will organize things that are related together, you know, make things easier and reusable. So we have templates and stuff like that. So if you are into Ansible and you want to get started quickly and you want to learn, then I really recommend you go there and try it. Okay. So what else do we have here? So Vagrant Cookbook, it's my book, and it is very introductory, and it's a very practical guide on Vagrant, and it covers Puppet, Chef, and Ansible, the three provisioners, the main most used provisioners, as a quick guide. So you can get a grasp, you can start learning Puppet, Chef, or Ansible, and compare them. What I think is most important is that you are able to compare how these different tools are different. Sure. So this is a coupon code, so you can get a discount, and you can get it afterwards. I will publish the slides. It's okay. So I think I'm early this time, but let's open for questions. I can show something else afterwards. So, does anyone have questions? Sure. Oh.
Hello. 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 To your left. Thank you very much. That was actually really good, especially seeing the Ansible configuration, because it's one thing about Vagrant that's always kind of bothered me. Not that I've really bothered to look into it, but I changed things a bit. I'm really curious. When Docker got released, I got really interested in it because it was able to produce a virtual environment without actually creating any overhead on the machine. I'm just curious of your thoughts of using something like Docker versus VirtualBox, for example.
Okay. So Docker, if you never heard about it, is another tool that it's kind of similar to Vagrant in some ways, right? But it doesn't use virtual machines. It uses containers, so it's a different concept. And I didn't try it yet, so I cannot say much about it. I think that it's cool. it avoids the overhead of virtual machines and stuff like that. You can kind of reuse, I don't know, stuff, right? But the thing is that Vagrant and virtual machines, they will like reproduce the real environment, the production environment from the start to the end. Like it will be really like a server. So I like this. I like to have really copy a very similar thing to what I would have in production. And also, when using, you can create a multi-staging setup using Vagrant and using Ansible or other provisioner to configure, to deploy, so you can reuse the provisioning scripts and everything. So I really like this approach. But I think Docker is awesome as well, but just different. Okay?
Hi.
Sorry, I'm blind.
So, problem regarding the things folder. So, the company I work for, we use Vagrant and Chef. And we have a huge legacy code base in Zen Framework 1 and a lot of PHP files, really a lot of them. So we had to not use the sync folder on the host system and basically have him on the virtual machine and export it via Samba or I think NFS. Just because having it in the host system was really slowing down, even though we used NFS. So is it something is that really the only way to go? Because that actually defeats the purpose of using Vagrant, because if you lose the machine, you lose your changes if you haven't pushed them. So any tips on how to fix that and go back to the sync folder on the
there are a couple of things that you can do. Is it working? There are a couple of things you can do to improve the performance. It will really depend on the application, but for instance, for Symfony applications, the cache and logs folder are a really big bottleneck, or small bottleneck, depending on the way you see a bottleneck. So what you have to do in this case is you have to find a way to remove this from the synchronized folders, because what happens is that each time you reload the application, imagine a lot of cache files are generated and logs and a lot of writing to disk. So this really slows down the performance of the synchronized folders. Each change, it will synchronize, so it really slows down. So what you can do is you can use rsync, is a good option. If it's really slow, you can use rsync. Rsync will synchronize only once, only by default. When you run Vagrant app, it will synchronize, or when you run Vagrant provision. But you can run a command to manually synchronize Vagrant rsync, or you can also run a command that is rsync auto that will keep running. You know, you just keep it running and separate the tab in your terminal and then just leave it there. It will synchronize, but it only synchronizes from the host to the guest. So you won't have the problem of the cache, probably. I'm not sure, but maybe it will be fine. And then you can also make this hack of changing the location of this cache and logs folder. What I use usually is I use the /tmp, shared memory, something faster, and it's not something that is not shared in the synchronized folders. And these are two things that you can try, because really, if you don't have the synchronized folders, it doesn't make much sense.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. I found the presentation very, very helpful.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you about Ansible. We are using Vagrant mainly for development environment, right? And combining Ansible, we provision our development environment. Is the purpose of this Playbook file to be used also for the production?
Yes and no, but yes. Wait and see. Yes, you can totally reuse your playbooks, your roles, but then you just have to create more, make it more versatile, use more variables. So there are some different approaches, but mainly you will have just to configure your local machine, your host machine, to use Ansible and to connect directly to the server. So just SSH stuff, configuration, and then you have to define a custom inventory file. So instead of using the default one from Vagrant, you just create one by hand, and you define that you have the dev machine, that it's the Vagrant machine, and you have also the production or staging machine, and define the IP address and stuff like that. And so it's just some more configurations you have to do, but it works fine. I'm using, I learned from Ross. I don't know where he is. Yeah. So he has a really great post about multi-staging with Ansible and Vagrant. And so I'm using this approach for Ansible.com. You can go there and see in the repository. So you have different inventories, and then you have a set of different variables. So to define like some things will have to change, some passwords. You can also use Ansible Vault to secure the passwords. But yes, totally doable. You just have to refine your playbooks to avoid, some common, I don't know, like using MySQL as user and password, or /Vagrant as document root. Some things like that you have to set up on variables and some stuff.
A sort of a practical administrative issue. Do you commit your playbooks with the project, or do you distribute them separately from your project?
With the project, well, there are different approaches, but usually with the project, because then I have all the Vagrant stuff, and I want that someone can contribute, usually with open source. So I want someone just go to the project repository, just clone it and Vagrant app, and good to go. So I put it all in the repository. It's a common practice to put it in the repository. But you can also have a different repository that has only the provisioning, and inside the tasks, you add a task to check out the code. You can also do that. But usually it's not really good, because then you depend on the synchronization. You need the files in your host to edit and stuff. So usually just better to put in the main repository and clone. Anyone else here?
I just wanted to add to that as a bonus on getting into the same repository, is that you also have your provisioning synchronized with the version of your app. So you have the thing in source control. So added bonus is versioning.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Hello. Okay,
Hello.
it's on. A common issue that I have run across is when I'm programming front-end stuff. So if I use Grunt or Gulp or something, it's watching the files.
Sorry?
So if I use Grunt or Gulp or something that's watching the files for changes, sometimes they don't pick up changes if I'm using sync or NFS.
Yeah.
So I've started watching files on the virtual machine in some instances, and then on the host machine in other instances. So I guess my question is, what do you do? And I guess if you have any tips around making that more, easy to use.
Yeah, well, I prefer, these commands to watch files run in the host, because then it's more guaranteed, because then some of these synchronization strategies won't synchronize back from the guest to the host. So if you run in the guest machine, so if you didn't understand what he was saying, it is that if you are using like rsync, for instance, it only synchronizes from the host to the guest. So when you make changes to the files, okay, they are reflected there. But if there is something different there, it will not be reflected here. So if you run Composer there, you won't have the packages here in the host machine, only in the guest. And then when you run the provision again, it will clean up the files, because it's always synchronized. So as you don't have the files in the host machine from Composer, the vendor folder, it will just clean up, it will synchronize, and then you won't have them anymore. So it's complicated. If you are using one of these strategies, you need to run Composer or the watching files commands like a static dump and stuff like that. You have to run in the host machine. There's no other way. Yeah, the NFS should synchronize both ways, but sometimes I don't know what happens, maybe a bug or something. But usually I don't have this kind of problem with NFS. It's just more performance issue I have with NFS, not missing files. Anyone else? More questions?
Sorry, maybe it's a stupid question, but what's wrong with Homestead? And why not just using Homestead? You know the.
Homestead. I don't use Homestead. I'm actually I will be honest. I'm not a Laravel developer. The secret, but but I think it's awesome, and you are all doing a great job. Okay? So I'm kind of an intruder here, but I admire and everything the work, the frameworks looks awesome. I just didn't have the opportunity yet to work with Laravel. But coming back to, I don't know, Homestead, I thought it was kind of to host the application, isn't it?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, the way I use it is just install the environment on your local computer, and then you get all the dependencies and everything is already installed, so you can just start developing right out of the box. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I guess that someone else on your team could do exactly the same, and you get the same sort of machine, and it gets updated and everything.
Yeah, well,
that's
I think Taylor could better answer that, or someone else. You.
So the difference between Homestead and the way that you're using it, Homestead has one environment that hosts many, many sites. So the way that, for example, I use Vagrant, I have one configuration for every site. Yeah. So when I bring it up, all the dependencies for that system are already working. And so many of my sites have very different types of dependencies and different PHP versions. So if I'm running PHP 5.2 here, I don't want to be running 5.3 and adding a bunch of stuff that's going to break the system on accident. So Homestead has a little bit different of a use case, I think.
Okay, then. Okay. Thank you for the answer. Yeah, well, usually Vagrant, the use case is really to separate, to have a very focus on one application only. So it's really only what that application needs and the specific versions. So you can work in different PHP versions and stuff like that. So I'm not sure it's, yeah. So here.
Yeah, thank you. I was very interested in Vagrant and Ansible. I do have one question though, because it sounds like there's a lot of problems setting stuff up. How much time are you spending on debugging and setting up Vagrant and Ansible?
Well, now I don't spend so much time because I just go to Ansible.com and then I download what I need, and then I just change some stuff. So and add new tasks or new roles if I need to. So it's just maybe if the first time you use it, it will take longer because you have to install Vagrant, VirtualBox, Ansible in this case, and you will start figuring out. But it actually doesn't take so long. After you get used to it, doesn't take so long for creating stuff like that. And just for the provisioning specifically, the documentation of Ansible is really great. You can find like everything there. It's really easy to find what you need. It's a bit different from if you some of you already searched in the documentation of Puppet and Chef. You know that's crazy stuff there. Like it's really chaos. So Ansible is different. I promise you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last question.
Drawing.
Hi, thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
I was wondering, for Windows, Ansible did a thing that it put Ansible locally on the guest machine. Yeah. So is that a worse way to do it? Like, is it that to be avoided if you're not on Windows?
Yeah, no. If you are not on Windows, no, you don't need that if you are not on Windows. That was just to make sure that people, when downloading from Ansible, the provisioning also works on Windows. But if you are working on a team that nobody uses Windows, which is common, let's say. At least it's been really a while since I worked with someone that worked with Windows machines. So that was really just to make sure to make it more portable, but you usually don't need that. Just
yeah, I got that, but yeah, so you don't really have to install Ansible on your host machine.
Yeah,
point.
You need to install. Yeah,
you need to install.
Not on Windows because it's not possible.
Yeah. Okay.
So only on, yeah, that's the thing. You can install, and you need to install Ansible if you are using Linux or Mac. But then if you are using Windows, you don't need to install Ansible, but you need that thing to run, you know. Yeah, you could probably use that hack for Linux too if you want to, but I don't think it's necessary. It doesn't have a point. And
okay, thanks.
Okay, so thank you.